was hoping not to cry because I'm so mad.
I think that's impactful though.
Yeah, last time I spoke, it was good, and then I put it down in the corner of the screen.
Yeah, yeah. Sharon didn't show me as well.
She probably just kept it saying there.
No, I think I'm pregnant.
Can't really.
Yeah, thanks that you requested it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Do you want to give these?
Right now. It's not as bad as summer. I've been right there. I did.
Maybe we just like take a moment before you start.
Yeah, we're gonna make ice cream.
He's good. Ron? For your attention, please. We're going to start the meeting. Again, I'd like to welcome people. Thank you for being here. This is a workshop, so there will be no public comment at this time. And before we start any further, for those that would so join me, we'll salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, the workshop is started or was decided to occur because the request for action by a group of constituents that have been here on at least 3 different occasions. And what essentially they've asked for is, and these are my words, is a motion that Cumberland County hereby moves to revoke that portion of its federal marshal contract which subsidizes the housing of ICE incarcerates within Cumberland County Jail. So this is trying to define the issue for us. There are a number of things that will be presented this evening. Let me start again. As a reminder, we will be following our meeting policy rules and ask that all individuals respect each other's position. Those invited presenters or presenter groups have up to 10 to 15 minutes for their presentation. We ask that no remarks or applause emanate from the audience during such. There is no time allotted for public remarks. As to the meeting, this is a meeting whereby the commissioners have invited individuals and or organizations to present information written or in person that will assist us in determining an answer to a request put forth by a number of the constituents, many of which are present. And I would like to indicate that we did invite the Maine American Civil Liberties Union, the Immigration Legal Advocacy Project, Maine Law School, Maine Department of Corrections, Maine Attorney General's Office, and a couple of our staff that don't normally make presentations, but we requested anyway, is our district attorney, Jackie Sakaris, and our sheriff, Cumberland County Sheriff, Kevin Joyce. This meeting is to ensure more transparency in the government by presenting issues of the advantages or disadvantages of taking a requested action, or, in this case, determining the difference between where an individual is housed versus why an individual is housed. In my opinion, most constituents' concerns were earnestly expressed passionately and truly from the heart, as eyes watered in some cases and borderline anger was shown in others. As to the constituents' request or question, at 3 of our regular meetings, and I'm repeating myself, I realize, due to the constituents' expressed concern of the appalling functionalities of the United States Immigration Custom Enforcement Agency, ICE, most public comments essentially requested the motionable action that I spoke of. This commissioner workshop will attempt to identify the ramifications of making such a decision that the motion carries in order to determine to what end. The commissioners at the end of the presentation may ask questions of the presenters or presenter groups. With that said, let's continue with item 3. And item 3 is, we'll begin the presentations. And we'll start with Kevin Joyce.
So for the last 5 months now, I've started out with the fact that the Cumberland County Jail has been holding inmates for the last 32 years. Nothing's changed in our world, with the exception of the current administration's priority. And the fact that some years we have a lot of ICE inmates that we're holding, and some years virtually none. The reason we do this is because there are 2 statutes in the state of Maine. The first one is a definition that specifically says a prisoner or inmate means an adult sentenced and committed to, transferred to, or detained in custody of a jail, including an adult in a community confinement monitoring program. The important statute is Title 30A 1554, federal prisoners. The keepers of the county jails shall, emphasis shall, receive and safely keep all prisoners committed under the authority of the United States until discharged, under the penalties provided for the safekeeping of prisoners under laws of this state. Added to that, a recent standard added under the Maine Department of Corrections says, under no circumstance may a jail refuse to admit an individual who has been arrested by a federal, state, county, or municipal law enforcement officer and transported to the jail, except as provided in standard E.2. E.2 basically talks about the mental capabilities and whether or not somebody's ill and should be in a hospital rather than a jail at that point. And it requires a clearance from the hospital. As I mentioned before, I took an oath to protect Cumberland County. I took an oath to uphold all state and federal laws. These are state laws. And I will not violate those regardless of how you folks decide whether or not we cancel the contract or not. If I can violate this law, what other laws is it okay for me to violate? With apparent impunity. I'm going to do what the people of Cumberland County elected me to do, and I'm going to stand behind what I'm doing.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate that. The next, our District Attorney, Jacqueline Saturis, she'll speak on the impact of ICE on her prosecution functions.
Thank you. My name is Jackie Sartoris. I'm the District Attorney here in Cumberland County. I have not met most of you. I am not, however, the district's attorney, so I want to make that really clear. I'm really here in my capacity as the lead prosecutor for Cumberland County. I'm an elected official, just as Sheriff Joyce is, just as the commissioners are. So I'm responsive to the people of Cumberland County and also to my duty sworn to uphold the constitutions of the United States and of Maine. So I'm not here really as someone with a role in ICE detentions. I can tell you that the impact of what's happening with ICE, however, on what we do has been felt. We have victims of crimes who have immigration statuses that are questionable, and they have withdrawn their willingness to work with law enforcement as a result of their fear of potential deportation. I will just be honest, that makes everyone less safe. When I have victims who are not willing to work with law enforcement because they fear deportation, that means that someone who's committed a crime is really unlikely to face the kind of prosecution that they should face. We rely on victim statements. We do a lot to support our victims. One of the things we used to be able to do is offer victims with whose immigration status was waiting a decision. We used to be able to offer them our support for a U visa. The U visa is a form that we fill out that says, because a particular victim has worked well with us and helped to secure prosecuting someone, we want to make sure that that is noted favorably in their application for asylum, in their application for status to become potentially an American citizen. Unfortunately, what I now know is that U visas are actually, the lists of people with U visas are, according to, I don't think just rumor, but some information, are being used to try to target people for removal. And what that means, again, is that people who've been victims of a crime and where you've got someone who is potentially likely to commit a crime against anyone, right? It could be anyone. Those folks, I would refer to them as defendants. Those folks, I cannot prosecute effectively without the cooperation of victims. So we are seeing, I've had emails, I've had phone calls from people saying, I cannot agree to be a victim any longer in a case. Please do not name me as a victim. That is a problem for everyone because it undermines public safety for everyone. I think it's a perspective that few people have really thought about, and I would urge everyone to really think about what we are doing when we target people in a way that undermines public safety. So that's been our experience in my office. I would say that's ramped up really over the last few weeks in particular. I reached out to someone recently and encouraged them to have a victim apply for a U visa, and they sent me information indicating that was no longer a safe option. So that's been our experience really since the ICE crackdowns have begun. For me, it feels a little bit like a bait and switch. I remember during the campaign that then former President Trump was campaigning on taking people who'd committed violent acts and removing them from the country. And I want to be really clear that the statistics we have right now indicate that about 93% of people who've been picked up by ICE have no convictions for violent criminal behavior. And about 71 to 72% have no criminal convictions whatsoever. And then the folks who do have criminal convictions, disproportionately, those are things like, a traffic stop, a speeding stop. Those are relatively low level. That's not to say that there aren't people I would like to have removed. And I'll be honest, that happens in my line of work. I have defense attorneys who say, please consider this person's immigration status. And when I look at that case, I say, that person should not stay here. This is a violent person who poses a risk to the American people, the people of Cumberland County, and I support proceeding to prosecute that case. The people, however, who have not committed a violent act, I don't think that's the conversation that we were having during the election season, and I do feel that if more people were aware of the statistics, they would be more likely to be as disappointed as I am at the way that we've currently targeted people who are not posing a risk or dangerousness to people in Cumberland County. Thank you.
Jackie, appreciate that. The next is Jim. Jim Gailey, our manager. will give us a contractual overview regarding the housing of federal prisoners.
Thank you. Staff looked at the current contract that we have around the terminating a portion of the contract. As we've heard in the past, the request is to uncheck the box that says ICE on the contract. Section 6 of the contract provides for the process of the terminating the agreement by at least giving a 30-day notice in advance of the termination date. The section does not expressly provide that partial termination is permissible, does not outline a different process for partial termination. However, Section 30 of the contract seems to indicate that partial terminations are permissible by excluding full and partial terminations from the process to amend the contract. It is possible that the termination procedures could be affected by a federal regulation governing the amendment or the termination of these agreements, but we have not found that to date. Going one step further, if the county does not have cooperative agreement and the termination provisions in this contract govern, then even if the county terminates the agreement, the county may continue to have some certain obligations. The county must give the federal government adequate time, even beyond the 30-day notice, to vacate the premises, which leaves open a question of whether the county would be paid under the contract for housing prisoners after the termination date. The county must also work with the federal government to locate alternative housing solutions for those impacted. It is not clear whether there are any obligations for the county to cover transportation costs or to transfer prisoners upon termination of the contract. It's probably unlikely, but still it was silent. So we feel as though there needs to be maybe a little deeper dive into the finite language of the contract, and if there's any citations out there that would be brought into defining the termination or semi-termination of this contract. Upon guidance from the commissioners that we're seeking, whether we send this out to outside counsel for further review. Thank you.
With that, we will start with presentations by those that have requested an opportunity to do that. The first on the list is No Ice in Maine. Would you please give your name and
Yes, that's me. I'm Shelby Layton. I live in South Portland. I am an organizer with No Ice for Maine. I am also an attorney. I'm going to focus my presentation on these questions about the legality of ending the contract with ICE. I provided to Mr. Gailey pretty shortly before this meeting a memo and some attachments. I don't know if you were able to email those around, but I do have copies of the memo here that I'm glad to share with folks, but I'll go over it with you. Here are the copies of the memo. Sorry, I didn't staple it.
No problem.
So there's 4 ways that the Cumberland County Jail and the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office cooperate with ICE. The first is what we've been talking about, which is operating as the only ICE detention facility in Maine. It has a contract, as we just discussed, with the U.S. Marshal Service that has checked the option for ICE to keep detainees at the jail long-term. And, pursuant to that contract, the jail has detained hundreds of people for ICE. The second thing that the jail does is it has a policy of encouraging officers to contact ICE to report people they suspect are undocumented. And that is from a 2025 memorandum that Sheriff Joyce wrote to Cumberland County Jail staff, which provides that anyone during a traffic stop or other investigation of violations of state law, if they have quote-unquote immigration concerns, they can make a referral to ICE as soon as possible. He also encouraged them, if they had any question about someone's immigration status, to make a referral to ICE. And I think that that's important to keep in mind because of the, some of the reasons that Jackie Sartoris brought up, which is that it can also make all of us less safe if people are afraid to go to officers and report crimes because their suspected immigration status may be reported to ICE. As far as I know, there's no guidance provided to officers of the Sheriff's Department regarding their, what factors they should consider when deciding whether they might have concerns about whether someone is in the country illegally. And you can imagine that they may base those concerns on things like the language somebody speaks or the color of their skin. The third thing that the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office does is support ICE operations. In the same memo, the sheriff said that the county will provide backup for ICE if they need immediate assistance, and he also stated that they can provide non-emergency support for ICE operations, and that officers who are interested in participating in a pre-planned ICE operation could seek approval to do so. Fourth, the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office facilitates ICE detainers, which is a request from ICE to local officials to hold someone past their release date so that ICE can determine their immigration status. I'm not going to go into the details of that here, but the policy that the sheriff has provided is not, as he contends, a policy of not honoring detainers. It is, in fact, holding people past their release date so that their immigration status can be investigated. I want to turn to the legality of the first one of those ways that the sheriff and the county currently cooperate with ICE, and that's the contract with ICE. The sheriff has cited two things in his presentation just now as to why he's legally required to do that, and neither of those things actually legally require him to, the county to have a contract with ICE or to detain people for ICE at all. So the first one is 30A MRS 1554, and that statute, first of all, it merely applies the penalties for the safekeeping of prisoners under the laws of the state to the safekeeping of federal prisoners. So it says, all the duties and obligations you have as to state prisoners, you also have them to federal prisoners. It doesn't say that you're required to keep federal prisoners, it just says you're required to, you have the same obligations if you do decide to do so. But I think more importantly is that it uses the word prisoners, and it not only uses the word prisoners, but the statute defines the word prisoners. And it defines them as people that are, quote, sentenced for a crime. And that's in 30A MRS 1510. And here, immigration detainees are not sentenced for a crime. In fact, many of them, or all of them, are not even charged with a crime. They're picked up for a civil immigration violation. So on its face, that 30A MRS 1554 doesn't apply, even if it applied to some types of federal prisoners like those detained by the U.S. Marshal Service or the Federal Bureau of Prisons, they would not apply to ICE detainees. The sheriff also mentioned the state correctional detention standards. So I want to talk about those for a second. So the state standard that he mentioned is new. I'm not sure where it came from, and if someone, I thought someone from the Department of Corrections might be here, but I think it would be helpful to get clarity on why this was added. But even the Department of Corrections does not assert that that standard requires a contract with ICE, nor could it, because again, Cumberland County is the only county that has a contract with ICE. So unless all the other counties in Maine are violating this standard, it does not require there to be a contract. So then the question is, does it require the jail to accept ICE detainees at all? And I think no, for a couple reasons. First, the Department of Corrections of the state of Maine does not have authority to, by a rule, require all jails in the state of Maine to accept federal detainees. The authority to create correctional standards is focused on regulations about safety, health, and security. None of those have to do with accepting immigration detainees or not accepting immigration detainees. So it's extremely doubtful that the Department of Correction has authority to issue this standard to begin with. Secondly, the correctional standard is not the law. The Department of Corrections has significant discretion to enforce it, and for example, when a jail like the Cumberland County Jail is accredited by a national organization, the DOC plays far less role in inspecting and enforcing the jail. In addition, the DOC can grant the jail a variance from any mandatory standard, including this one. And so that's another thing that I think it would be helpful to get clarity from the Department of Corrections if they would in fact enforce this standard against the jail if the jail chose to end its contract with ICE. And then finally, I do want to talk about another statute that the sheriff didn't mention, but that has been cited in the memorandum from the Department of Corrections, and that's 25 MRS 1502. And again, that also doesn't require cooperation with ICE or a contract with ICE because it's focused on the powers and duties of the Maine State Police and the cooperation of the Maine State Police with local law enforcement and local jails. And it provides essentially that local jails must accept people who are arrested by other local law enforcement or state law enforcement, not by federal law enforcement. I do want to also just point out briefly that there is a statute under state law that governs this contract. And that statute is the Maine Interlocal Cooperation Act, which authorizes state agencies and political subdivisions like the county to enter into, quote, intergovernmental agreements with federal agencies. And this contract, if you can see right on the contract, it is called an intergovernmental agreement. And the act requires certain conditions be met, including that the IGA must specify the duration of the contract, the purpose of the contract, and other specific information about the contract, and that the contract be filed with the Secretary of State. And so to the extent we're looking to state law for what the requirements are here, that state law very clearly applies to this situation unlike the other ones, and it is not clear that the county has complied with that state law. And so I think that if we're worried about complying with the law, we should comply with all the laws. And I think it's just more evidence that these other statutes really aren't intended to apply to this situation. There are also plenty of other statutes under state law that focus on state and local cooperation with federal law enforcement, and they're very clear when they do that. They use the word federal. And so I don't think that we should assume that statutes like 25 MRS 1502 are intended to somehow encompass federal law enforcement when they don't talk about federal law enforcement at all. And then I think just a word to conclude about why all of this is a little bit beside the point. I think it's important, the rule of law is important, but sometimes there's questions about what the law means, and we have to stand up what's right and push for the interpretation that we want and for the laws that we want. And so I think that as you're thinking about this issue, the question should not be, is it definitively clear? Does it definitively not, like when you're talking about the contract just now, there may be some questions that you can't get answers to, but the only way you're gonna find out for sure is by taking a stand and doing the right thing, and then dealing with the consequences. And I don't think that, if I were your lawyer, which I'm not, I would probably advise you that, there's a tiny risk here, but not a very big one. If you end this contract tomorrow, there's very little that, it's very unlikely that the state is gonna come after you and say, you have to cooperate with ICE. And if they do, I think you would be 100% in the right, and we would all be behind you in pushing back on that. And I think based on my analysis of the legal issues, that you would win. And so I think considering that when you're looking at this issue, and it doesn't have to be, we're 100% sure about everything before you move forward. I think it's important that you act quickly and that you take a stand against ICE now before it's too late.
Thank you.
Are we waiting until all the presentations before we?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Please don't leave.
The next group is Presente Maine.
Thank you. I also have things to share. You can help me.
Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Crystal Cron. I'm the founder and director of Presente Maine. We're a grassroots organization that works at the intersections of racial, gender, climate, and economic justice. And we work to restore the dignity, joy, and well-being of displaced and dispossessed Latina communities in Maine. And I just wanted to share that I'm the daughter and granddaughter of the Quechua peoples of the Andes Mountains and of the sacred city Cusco, the navel of the world. And that I'm part of the diaspora of tens of millions of people, forced migrants from Latin America who have been violently displaced from their ancestral lands. Today, we're facing an unprecedented expansion of immigration enforcement that directly impacts Cumberland County. And the failure to meaningfully address it has made all of our communities, including your constituents, less safe. Through federal legislation, ICE has received approximately $30 billion over 4 years, a nearly 300% increase over their previous budget, allowing them to hire 10,000 new officers. ICE's new budget is now larger than the FBI, CIA, and NSA combined. This expansion is only possible through local sheriffs and local jails, who are already deeply complicit in this system by housing ICE detainees and profiting from this detention infrastructure. Regardless of the intentions when the contract was originally agreed upon, Cumberland County is now an enabler of a system that's receiving a blank check to gear up for a war on our communities, with effects that will last well beyond this administration. At the same time, the Trump administration has launched systematic denaturalization proceedings to strip naturalized citizens of their citizenship. While it's well documented that there's no correlation between immigration and criminality, this administration is determined to deport immigrants already living in the U.S., most of whom have committed no crime, and many of whom have lawful status. This means that no one is truly safe from this enforcement machine. At Presente, we work directly with families living under this threat. And we ourselves are families that are living under this threat every day. So I want to share a few stories of people that I've talked to just in these past few months. A community member calls me on the phone on her lunch break. She says her friend needs to talk to me. She passes her the phone. It is a mother. She says her husband and son have been abducted. I ask where, how, what were the circumstances? She barely knows. She says they left Portland this morning to go up north for work. She's not sure of the town. A coworker called her and said they'd been taken after being profiled on the highway and then the police following them to their work site and making arrests. It's now a race against the clock to find them, and I start calling jails all over the state, checking the detainee locator and reaching out to attorneys in my networks to help me find them. Almost 3 days later, we find out that they were in Rangeley and shipped off in the middle of the night to Plymouth. Another story. I sit with a woman who I've been in community with for a long time. We're in a tiny intake room in our offices, me, her adult daughter, and an attorney. I make small talk, asking about the family, how is work going, and looking at her with tender eyes. I feel the exhaustion in her gaze and her breath. We're making family preparedness plans. I start explaining what a power of attorney is and how it can help. God forbid something were to happen, I say, you'd have a plan for your younger kids. That person could help make decisions on your behalf and at your direction and help you reunite with your kids if you had to go home. God forbid. Another story. A woman who is a leader in her church calls me to talk about a young man she's been helping. He came here as an unaccompanied minor. He's here alone with no family and no support system. Through the church, she made a connection with him and had been helping him to access health care. He had just gotten a job at a local restaurant. He borrowed a friend's car to get to his first shift and was stopped by police for driving under the speed limit. After asking questions about his immigration status, he was taken into custody and just a few days later is now in Kentucky. And she asked me what can be done. These are real stories of terror. Our immigrant neighbors are increasingly isolated at home, missing medical appointments, work, and school because they're afraid to leave the house. They're reluctant to call emergency services when needed out of fear they'll be taken. This fear is not unfounded, yet when faced with this reality, Cumberland County has so far failed to take a principled stance against what is a rapidly escalating war on immigrants. Families in our community live with uncertainty about whether they'll be separated tomorrow, despite contributing to Maine's economy and communities for years. Every day, I live in fear that my family might be abducted, and I have to keep a brave face in front of my 2 kids, despite living in a country and a state that is hostile to their and my very existence. Some argue that keeping people detained locally is somehow better than transferring them out of state, but this is a false choice. People don't need to be detained anywhere. There are proven, safe, humane alternatives that allow individuals to live in their communities while awaiting immigration hearings. Immigration proceedings are civil, not criminal, and detention is not mandatory. People don't need to be detained anywhere. They can and should be released into their communities with access to legal and case support. This has already been shown to work safely, affordably, and humanely. If Cumberland County ends its ICE contract, ICE must choose: release people into the community or transfer them elsewhere. With community pressure, legal support, and organized advocacy, we can tip that decision towards release, especially with securing rapid legal representation, community bonds and housing support, case management to help people attend court, and public pressure against out-of-state transfers. This is the work that Presente already does and will continue to do. The question isn't whether people are detained here or there. It's why they're being detained at all in our county jail with our tax dollars. The right to fight your case with your family, not in a cage, should be the baseline. Cumberland County can and should be part of that shift. As many of you may be aware, Maine faces specific vulnerabilities. The entire state falls within the 100-mile border zone where ICE and Border Patrol exercise increased search and seizure authority. We're experiencing devastating cuts to federal aid programs while being targeted for detention growth. The longer CCJ continues to contract, the more normalized ICE cooperation becomes, while setting the table for further expansion across the state. Right now, we are the latest example of how local sheriffs are turning jails into ICE detention centers. The ramifications of this are more than just the families living in Maine being detained. It's part of a nationwide network that shuffles people hundreds and thousands of miles across the country. Community members from other states who spend a night or two in Cumberland County Jail before being shipped off elsewhere, despite never being charged with a crime. This is by design. As Jonathan Thompson, Executive Director of the National Sheriff's Association said, "We're essential. ICE can't do what they need to do under the current circumstances without sheriffs and our jails." That's exactly why we need to take a principled stand here. Cumberland County can choose not to be part of this national deportation infrastructure. Local agreements are crucial to the success of their plan. We need to say no more. It's time we take ourselves off the map. Maine has always been a place where people can build better lives for their families. We're known for community care, for helping neighbors, for believing everyone deserves dignity. Continuing to contract with ICE betrays those values. These coordinated attacks we're seeing don't just stop with undocumented immigrants. They come for naturalized citizens, then birthright citizenship, creating permanent instability for all of us. This is the natural progression of the deportation machine left unchecked. When the government can arbitrarily revoke citizenship while massively expanding enforcement, no one is truly safe. When its enforcement arm, known as ICE, can routinely disappear families that built lives and contributed to Maine communities for decades without due process, we cannot continue to rationalize it or do business with it. This moment forces us to confront what kind of state we want to be. Do we continue enabling a system that strips citizenship while expanding detention? Or do we live up to Maine's values of looking out for our neighbors, not abandoning them when the government comes calling? As you've heard over the past few months from fellow people of conscience, and you have heard again tonight, you have the power to choose. This is a local issue with local solutions. Cumberland County is not required to be a holding facility for ICE's expanding operations. This contract is not binding. You can choose to prioritize community safety over detention profits. You can vote to end this contract on October 20th and refuse to be complicit in this $30 billion assault on our communities. Or you can continue to greenlight this terror campaign. It's your choice. Our communities are under siege, but we are not powerless. Our citizenship, whether birthright, naturalized, or claimed through belonging, cannot be revoked by government decree. We are here, we belong, and we will not be erased. But we need local officials who stand with us and not profit from our persecution. Thanks.
The next organization on the agenda is the Democratic Socialists of Maine.
I'm not, who placed them on the agenda?
No.
I'm a proud member, but our understanding was that there were.
And
that was
then
the
percent
first
pay,
piece.
and then during high school.
Steve, I think during high school next.
Oh. We'll just take.
We'll gladly see
And
that.
there's no ice in Maine, and so it's at the end there.
I think you guys have run.
Yeah, you
Oh,
gotta
I
flip
see
those.
the problem.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the name tags are.
It wasn't like that before. So, is that helpful?
That helps.
Thanks. Mine's right.
Sorry.
Okay.
So is Daring up next, or which one is next?
So, well,
Either one on the ends.
Either one.
yeah, either one on the end. All right.
Rock, paper, scissors? Okay, I'll go. I'm from Daring High School. We've met before. My name is Mariella Hakame. I'm a social worker at Deering. I am a proud soccer coach for the boys varsity soccer team. I'm missing the game today, but they all are very in support of me being here. I'm a proud Latina, and I'm a daughter of a first-generation Ecuadorian immigrant. I was born here in the U.S., so I have my U.S. citizenship, but I proudly represented Ecuador in the Women's World Cup because I'm so proud to be of a diverse background. So I'm also a citizen of Ecuador. Like I said before, I don't need to harp on it, but I want to just because I think it's important to talk about what my students go through. And again, it's not just limited to Deering High School, it's limited to all of Portland Public Schools. I have about 30 different social work cohorts that work in all the different levels of education, and they all, back me being here and have faced similar conversations with their students and their families. I know I talked about it last time I came here, but I think it's really important to note that with the immigrant population that we serve, since we are the most diverse school north of Boston, and we're very proud of that. These immigrants have faced just unimaginable trauma, and everybody hates trauma. Yeah, we've heard it, but I think we need to hear it because we didn't even have to go through it. These students, every single day, I'm hearing stories. My job is to hold the space for them and to help them through that trauma, but truly, I've said it last time and I genuinely mean it, the stories are unimaginable and they're so common. All of our students, it's not like their families just woke up one day and decided, oh, I just want to come to the US for fun. They're all escaping horrors. Like I said before, rape, I've had students human trafficked, their families murdered in front of them, gang violence, extortion, poverty, starvation. It's not just 5 kids out of 800, it is the majority of the stories. Though I believe everybody deserves the right to have a safe place with access to their basic human rights, even if you don't believe that, they've really escaped an unimaginable amount of things to be here, and they deserve to be here safely. Just to speak, in the last month at Deering High School and at Portland Public Schools in general, our attendance numbers have decreased worse than ever because families are afraid to send their kids to school out of fear of ICE and out of fear of us not being able to protect them. And unfortunately, in this administration, I can't tell them that I can protect them in school. I'd encourage them to be here with us and learn and to take control of their education, but they're living in fear and they're afraid to come. For the students that are very fearful but decide to get up every day and still come to school when their lives are at risk with ICE and their families' lives are at risk, the symptoms that they face at school, they have PTSD, anxiety, panic attacks, depression, trouble focusing at school. Their learning is impacted every single day because they are so fearful of what is going to happen to them. And or they've also had somebody in their family deported, whether it's them, their sibling, their cousin. I've had students deported. There are a number of students that we don't report on the news because their parents want, their privacy. I have had a number of my students that I care very deeply for that are already deported and they're back in their native countries. Those countries that they escaped to be here to be safer. It's not like they went here for fun, like I said, they came here to escape the horrors that they were facing. I think that their families also deserve respect, not just the kids. The kids are our future, but I think that everybody here in the world deserves respect and dignity. But just to add, those parents made those decisions to come here, and you may say, hey, there's a legal way to do it. I can tell you, being the daughter of a first-gen immigrant, it takes decades for some people. It is not just you wake up and decide to come here and you apply and you're approved. It takes decades and decades, and I still have family members that are trying to get approved to come here, and they still are not getting approved. So if you put yourself in those shoes of, hey, my child just got raped and my husband just got murdered in front of me, which is a common story, are you going to wait 10 years to escape that trauma, or are you going to do whatever you can to find a safer life? I would think we're all going to do whatever we can, including you, to find a safer life for your family. I know we can't even imagine it because it sounds so horrible, but it is so common, like I said before. So the way that I think about the citizens, and I think we should be protecting everybody here in Maine, is that if this person came, crossed different countries on foot with no food, escaped violence, swam across rivers with alligators to be here, we should be proud. We should be really, really freaking proud to have them be part of Maine because they are so brave and courageous and they've been through the worst, but they are still resilient. So those are people I want in my community. Those are people I want to work with, I want to learn from, and that I want to protect myself. In addition, in the sports and the arts world and in our Portland Public Schools, kids are, when they're going to sports, like I said, I represent the boys varsity and JV. We have a very diverse group there. We have to safety plan. We have to safety plan with them if ICE comes around them. How horrible is that? I got to go play soccer when I was younger and just have fun and mess around. They have to think about they're putting their lives at risk every single day that they play a sport or they go to, a music event off campus or even in campus these days. So the trauma that they're facing, the way that it affects their mental health is incredible. And so if we think about whether you like it or not that their parents may have come here with documents or not documents, a lot of our students in our community, they were born here. So even if they're the daughter or the son of an immigrant that you feel like did not come here the right way, they were born here and we represent them. And we know that education is power. And if they don't come to school because they're terrified of ICE, they don't get that education. If they do come to school, but they're facing PTSD, anxiety, trouble focusing, just not being able to be successful because of all the fear that they're facing, they're not going to have a great educational outcome. And we know, everybody knows that especially in the US, if access to education, better healthcare outcomes, better mental health outcomes, better job security, so we have to really think about the future of our community in general in that way. Another thing that I'd like to add is if we think that this is just an immigrant problem, it's not. It's also for all of our kids of color, our families of color, our adults of color that live in Maine and in Portland, because they're getting racially profiled, which has been mentioned before. And so we have such a long history of violence and racism in this country, and we are perpetuating it by working with ICE. From personal example, I'm 29 years old. 20 years ago, I lived in a small town in upstate New York. My dad was a surgeon. So a brown, Spanish-speaking, first generation, first language was Spanish, spoke with a very strong accent, surgeon. And I remember one of my first memories was getting pulled over because they saw him and they did not think he could have a white daughter. So these are things that are like, you feel it, right? Like, I remember that. And so these poor kids go through that thinking they're gonna be taken because they look different, even if they were born here. And so I think life is so hard that, why do we have to make it worse? Why can't we try to protect people and just give people basic dignity? And I can also say, from working with my other counterparts, my other social workers, they're not just getting brown or black or immigrant people having concerns and fears and terrified, it's the white kids too, because we're not born racist, we learn it. And so our poor, our white English-speaking first-gen, Americans, they as well, they feel it. They look at their best friends that are black and an immigrant from a different community, and they're saying, oh my God, they lost their dad. Oh my God, I can't play outside with them because they're unsafe. So our kids watch us. They watch what we do, and they're affected by it as well. So I think, like I said before, we have a choice to lead by example and do the right thing, because our kids will remember. They really, really, clearly. I'm so emotional because I do remember it, and I'm so upset that these kids are going through it again. And I think what's really important to note with the jail thing is, the kids that I have that their parents or their loved ones are detained, they're not visiting them in jail. So to me, that argument is really stupid because they're so afraid for their own safety. They're not going to just go hop over to the jail and say hi to the person that's detained. So either way, like it's been mentioned, when we work with them, their families are lost, they're broken, and we're doing that to them. So I think that we do have the power. I know that it feels like it's a really hard thing to do because of the laws, and we're trying to figure out how to get out of the contract if you guys choose that. But I think, we can do the right thing, and we can work together to find an avenue, because we have to stop this. It's just perpetuating racism, it's perpetuating violence, and I think our country has seen more than enough violence, and I think we really need to tap into that empathy. These people deserve empathy and dignity, and that we can all live in harmony. I think it's possible, and I think if we look at our history, there were people that said it can't be done, but there was people like us that said, yes, it can, let's figure it out, and I really think that you guys have the power to do it, and we're absolutely 100% all behind you, so. Sorry for crying, but thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Now we have Maine Immigrants' Right Coalition.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry for getting the mix-up here.
No, that's fine.
And good job.
That's fine. I guess I'm the last one to go, so I think Patty Ruben was supposed to be testifying on our behalf and has emailed, and I was looking at it and wanting to read it, but I feel...
Excuse me, before you start, could you introduce yourself?
Oh, sure, sorry. My name is Mufalo Chitam, and I'm the Executive Director for the Maine Immigrant Rights Coalition. We're a coalition of almost 110 organizations that are providing, direct service to immigrants and doing advocacy in our state, as well as helping people integrate here in our state. We're a statewide organization, but our offices are here in downtown Portland. So our policy director was supposed to be testifying, and I just picked up his presentation, and then I'm reading it. It really him and really not me. So I just want to take the time to really speak to all of you. I think what's hard, especially when we sit in places like this, is where we are basically asking for help. And I've been doing this work, I've been in this role for 7 years. And I was just talking to somebody who just came in from Germany, and they're doing this research, looking at the work that we do as immigrants, especially ethnic-based organizations here in our state, how we've been, and Maine, and maybe most of you might not know this, Maine, the work that we do at grassroots level is really, really exceptional in the country. We are one of the states that are very diverse in terms of how we provide work and direct service to the grassroots. And this is all testimony to how the state of Maine has really embraced immigrants, but also embraced our organizations. We don't have a lot of money, but we have so much passion, but we also have a very engaged mainstream activists and people in the churches, grassroots work. So our work is really from the grassroots, but it really connects to systems, whether it's really all the way to Augusta, whether it's through municipalities. You see our work on the ground. So I'm speaking to you all as leaders. We can spend so many hours telling you the impact, telling you stories, whether it's in the community, whether it's the stories that we're telling you, in the schools. You can hear the legal pieces. When I look at where we are now with this contract, you are sitting in places of power. History will remember each one of you. It is not going to be around whether the technicalities, is this right, is this wrong, we can debate all we can. At the end of the day, when each one of you puts your head on your pillow, history is going to remember you. You are at this point where, as the state, the trust that we have built in our system, in our elected officials, in you people who sit in places of power, the work that we've done, the work that we did during COVID. We worked together with community-based organizations. Most of our communities couldn't even shelter in place. They stayed up to keep us safe because they knew that we are only as safe as the next person. And so we came together really looking at ourselves all the way to the grassroots. We are at that point where, a contract like this has taken away trust. Just simple trust. Just simple trust. We always talk about, when somebody, I was just meeting up with somebody who literally they had a domestic violence in the home. She picked up the call. She was unsafe. Picked up the call and called the police to stay safe. The next thing that happened, the husband was picked up. A woman in Androscoggin County had an 11-year-old son who is sexually abused so badly. And I'm saying this because this is the work that we see so badly by a very, 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 very bad man. She picked up the call to call the police. The next thing that happened, her kids were taken. She was detained. The husband right now, as I speak, is in med and in coma. So when we're talking about being unsafe, as I feel unsafe to even call. When I feel unsafe to call who is supposed to keep me safe. Maine can make history. Maine can make history and just say, just for the sake of us feeling safe, we're not going to have this in our neighborhood. It's all going to just go down to trust. Do I trust that I can be safe in this community? There are things that we put in our communities that are just a symbol of untrust. That's about it. It's just the symbolism of what this is. I am not a lawyer. I'm just an advocate. I just advocate for immigrants like me, and I advocate for myself. And I just look at the end of the day and just say, this is just eroding public trust and community trust. That's it. That's it. Yes, we are talking about, well, what if people are arrested and they're going to be taken out? You know, we can argue all that. But it's just what symbols are we putting in our community that are making you and I feel safe. You can walk past a jail. I can't. Right now, I can't walk past a jail. I'm an American citizen, but I just feel unsafe. When I go to the airport, I literally have to run out of there. It's just, like we're just living on edge. So I'm saying all this and speaking to each one of you. I'm an executive director. She's an executive director. We are all sitting in places of power. We have an opportunity right now to change history. We have an opportunity as leaders to say it was us. When our grandchildren, when our great-grandchildren look back, they're going to say, in Maine, it was my mom, it was my dad, it was my grandfather who decided to say, not in Cumberland. So I'm speaking to you just from that place of symbolism of what this is in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. The last thing we have in presentations is we had invited MDOC, the Department of Corrections, to come, and we have a letter from them that indicates what their position is in federal arrests. And I'll read the body of the letter. Pursuant to 25 MRS Section 1502, quote, municipal and county jails shall at all times be available for detention of persons arrested by the state or any other law enforcement officer, unquote. This statutory mandate requires county jails to accept individuals arrested by federal law enforcement officers. Paragraph. Operational standards further confirm this obligation. Standard mandatory P.32 provides that under no circumstance may a jail refuse to admit an individual arrested by federal, state, county, or municipal law enforcement and transport to the jail, except as expressly provided in Standard E.2, which is a health issue, as the sheriff pointed out. As a matter of practice, county jails typically hold individuals for up to 72 hours, which corresponds with the time frame in which an initial appearance must occur. Rule 5A of Maine Rule of Unified Criminal Procedure requires that an arrested person be brought before a judicial officer, quote, in no event later than 48 hours after the arrest, unquote, excluding weekends and holidays. Federal immigration authorities also reference a 48-hour detainer period for individuals already in custody. Paragraph. Accordingly, county jails are legally obligated to accept detainees presented by federal law enforcement officers for at least the period necessary to comply with state law governing initial appearances. This duty is mandatory, and refusal to admit such arrestees would be inconsistent with both statute and jail standards. End of letter. That's just into the record. The last item on the agenda, and we'll turn it back to the sheriff, is the explanations, the external interaction with ICE and other law enforcement agencies and how they respond to that. Sheriff?
Sure. As I find myself saying quite a bit lately, don't let the facts get in the way of a great story. I want to address a couple of things regarding my memo, since it was taken a little bit out of context. So I did send out a memo to my staff earlier this year, and I laid the groundwork in the second paragraph that basically said that we are not trained as ICE investigators. Actually, nor were we trained in Department of Environmental Protection, Federal Motor Carrier laws, OSHA, and FAA. And I did say, if you suspect something, you write it down, forward it, like we would for any of those federal agencies that I just mentioned, to them, and let them make a decision on whether or not there's a violation. So it's real clear to my staff, we don't enforce ICE laws. It goes on to talk about the fact that we are not trained, it's a specialty, and if we want to get sued, we'll take on ICE investigations because we'll make a mistake, because it's a specialty. It's true that I told people to take a report and forward it if they feel. Now, police officers have discretion. They're out there 24 hours a day. I'm letting them know, if you feel, you make a report, you can forward that to ICE. I did say, if ICE calls in an emergency and wants backup, we will be there. It is my obligation, it's my staff's obligation to make sure other law enforcement personnel do not get injured. So I stand by that. I'd want ICE, if I was getting my ass handed to me on the street, to stop and protect me. And I expect that of my staff. I did say, if there's a pre-planned event, I will make the decision, because my credibility stands on that. I've told people, if ICE comes with a pre-planned event, we'll probably be out directing traffic, but we won't be laying hands on people because we don't have the authority, nor are we ICE agents. And then I go on to end it. It's been mentioned that we're the only ICE detention center in Maine. It aggravates me when we discipline an employee and they say, well, I did it because everyone else does it. We're the only one that might have a written contract. But if people wanted to do due diligence, maybe investigate a little deeper, probably find out we're not the only ones holding ICE inmates. Just saying. But again, don't let that get in the way.
It's true.
You know, we find other laws that try to, make this ambiguous. As I mentioned before, I've worked for the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office for 39 years. Pre-ICE, when it was the old Immigration Naturalization Service, I didn't make enough money as a deputy sheriff in Cumberland County, so I worked part-time for immigration. And I moved the folks that are in our custody right now to court, to various places, including deportation. All I did was a people mover. But what I learned is that we do not belong in the immigration enforcement area because there's an exception to everything. Somebody asked me the other day about a law. I printed a particular immigration law out. One section, 177 pages. So our deputies are not going to enforce immigration law because there's no way they can grasp that. We don't have it at the Maine Criminal Justice Academy, and we don't get training on it. And there's this thing called the 287G that allows police departments to get some training and get some authority, but it's a 40-hour online training. That's enough to get us sued. I heard about an individual that was abducted and eventually went to Rangeley and then off to Plymouth. Believe it or not, I got a call on that. And I spent about an hour and a half of my day a couple weeks ago, or whenever it happened, trying to call every jail to find out where this individual was, because they weren't in my jail with these individuals. And then I called and some of the northern borders sheriffs to try to find out if they were there. The bottom line is, whoever called had some interest in the abduction of these people. I tried to help them out. And come to find out, they were in Rangeley and ended up being shipped out of state. So it's not the heartless sheriff up here, just the sheriff that's trying to follow the law and protect the community. We hold heinous criminals. I've got some people on a list that are in the custody of ICE that have done some pretty serious crimes. We heard of one individual, sexual assault of a minor. I don't know about you, but if I see an individual that looks a lot like me and they sexually assault a minor, I just assume they be shipped out too. Or endangering the welfare of a mentally ill person. Or in gangs, some serious gangs, that really don't care about us. They'll shoot you as much as look at you. And we've got a couple. My jail's not filled with them. We got a lot of gang members, but we've got a couple that are on ICE custody. I hear about, treating these folks, in cages. I met with a group about a month ago, much like you folks. The air was really cold when I walked into this residence. I could feel it. I was on my day off. Actually, I don't have days off. Night off. I don't have nights off. And when I talked to them, I said, look, these people aren't in cages any more than anybody else. They get phone calls, they get tablets, they get visitation, they get the same meals as everybody else. There's no difference as far as the treatment of ICE inmates at the Cumberland County Jail and anybody else. Everybody's innocent until proven guilty, unless, of course, they've been sentenced there. And that's a third of the folks. I hear you talk about asking for help. I go back to the individual that called wanting to find these two people that were abducted in northern Maine. I'm not sure how I would know, but I spent a little bit of time trying to answer those questions for that person because they were very worked up about it. So I'm not the heartless guy that you think is out there. I hear about history. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, a lot of police officers have made history. Some have ran into burning buildings, etc. And some, like Derek Chauvin, have done things that I'm repulsed about. We'll know about Derek Chauvin because he's on the wrong side of history. My staff work very hard to do their job day after day after day. What I'm hearing here is complaints about federal law, which we have no jurisdiction over. ICE tactics, which sometimes my eyes roll at some of what I'm seeing, but they don't work for me, I don't work for them, and I cannot influence them. There's been 5 months that people have been coming in here about what's going on in the world today with ICE. The folks around this table aren't going to affect that whatsoever. We have no control over it. When people bring their arrest to my jail, whether it's state police or Portland, I might think that urinating in public is a real minor thing, considering everything else I'm holding. But to the person that individual was urinating on their property, it's a real important thing. So I accept that. Whether or not I personally agree with it or not, I accept it because it's the law. It's the same law that I'm quoting here about federal inmates. The bottom line is, as I mentioned before, and I've mentioned the last 5 months, and to a number of people, I will not violate the law. Because if this law is okay to violate, what else? Is it okay for me to go out and drink and drive? Is it okay to me to abuse people? You know, where does it stop? Because we can have it happen. The bottom line is, and no, I'm not abusing people. I've been accused of a lot of things, including forced sterilization. I guarantee you that's not going on. And yes, we hold ICE inmates. That's our relationship with ICE, and that's all it will be. Thank you.
Okay, next is commissioner questions. James?
I've got a few, I can't remember half of them because I forgot my pen. But I would like to know for sure, and the letter from the Department of Corrections, frankly, it would have been quite worthwhile, I think, if the Department of Corrections, the Department of the Attorney General, or somebody from the governor's office were here to have something meaningful to say about a couple of things. The first is, what are the legalities that we face? And, you know, there's a lot of people who have been here in the last 5 months who really want kind of a stroke of objection or civil disobedience or illegality, if it amounts to that, which it somewhat seems that it would, for us to simply say, we're closing the jail to ICE. And as far as I can tell, there are two things that are gonna happen if we did that. The first would be, it would only be closed for about 20 minutes before somebody that we could not control would reopen it. And the second thing probably would be that there would be a kind of completely avoidable financial result from that we could find our way through easily enough, I think. You know, the tenor of some comments has been, oh, well, this is all about money. It's got nothing to do with money. We write the budget every year, and we can write the budget the way we need to accommodate whatever this would amount to. What I have been looking for is something that actually protects the people who run afoul or appear to run afoul of the racist, ridiculous immigration laws that have been visited on us and which now are being enforced by someone who I believe has no moral character whatsoever. Unfortunately, apparently, 40.5% of the voting public in the last election thought otherwise, or maybe they just tolerated what happened. So I have great pain about the very things that everybody has been talking about. I've been on Portland City Council, and then later here, I've been dealing with immigrant issues for 3 decades. They're one of our greatest resources, and they have been made to suffer in ways that European immigrants in past times suffered a little, but nothing like this, as far as I can tell. And I'm particularly disheartened by people in your situation, some of whom are only 3 months old. They're born in the United States. The Constitution of the United States says that they are citizens of this country and of this state. And when their family gets ripped apart, infants cannot stay, and there's no accommodation for them. They're citizens. They're supposed to be entitled to the equal protection of the laws and the privileges and immunities of the citizens of the state in which they live and the country in which they reside. And they are also being illegally, unlawfully, I think, mistreated. and they're faced with circumstances that they don't even appreciate, of course, because they're quite young, but that is a particularly vicious, to me, form of discrimination. I have a number of questions about this, but frankly, I have been for some time of the idea that we're much better off, the people that have been detained and who are in any jail in Maine, and it's not true that Cumberland County is the only place where detainees are incarcerated. Particularly, it's important for people who are local, who have local connections, who have family here, who might even have a lawyer here. This information drought and the secrecy that is attempted to be enforced is un-American and is also very harmful. So one of the things we have done, the sheriff has got, looks like a pretty active staff of compiling this information, currently on about a weekly basis in the last couple of weeks, and as long as it's legal, and there's some indication that it's actually supposed to be secret, and we'll have to look into that. But one of the things you can do for despicable, unlawful activity, despicable lawful activity, which is what we seem to be faced with here, is to shine a bright light on it. Let the public at large know what's going on. And I will tell you this, I just did the count because we just got a sheet today. There are about 60 people, and it varies every day, I suppose. I'm pretty sure that's true. There are about 60 people in the Cumberland County Jail detained because of ICE. Of those 60 people,
Can I ask a question? We've been.
Right now,
No.
we're presenting.
of those 60 people, only 21 are from Maine. So the complaint that the jail is being used as a nice detention facility has some legitimacy for sure. I can tell you that in an operation called Two Bridges, which is a joint jail for Saginaw and Lincoln counties, they have a policy where they insist upon proof of probable cause for anyone who's arrested by virtue of something called an administrative warrant. A warrant authorized by a judge is based on a judge deciding that there's such a thing as probable cause. It's sufficient to justify an arrest. But an administrative warrant is something that's signed by a supervisor without particular information. And I would have a question whether that is a lawful detention, because under American law, you cannot detain somebody except under probable cause. And right now, there is no administrative opportunity for a review of the facts other than the signature of some administrator. And that just amplifies the suspicion that whatever administrators have that responsibility will sign anything. We don't know. In America, we've always had independent review of those circumstances. The other thing we don't know is under what circumstances could people who are detained by ICE be released? The Department of Corrections just indicated, and I hope I misunderstood it. I think they just indicated that for 48 hours, you can do whatever you want. And that is complete bullshit. There were 2 years ago, before we were blessed with Commissioner Smith, we had 3 lawyers on this commission. We've gotten rid of the 2 best, and now there's just me. But I can tell you this, there is no question that there is no legal right whatsoever for 48 hours of ad hoc detention. That's nonsense. You cannot be held against, your liberty cannot be interfered in that way without probable cause and an adequate legal basis for the detention. And long ago, and this relates back, frankly, in my, whatever quality it's had, public service, to the city, Portland City Council, there was a guy by the name of Michael Chitwood, who was the chief of police, and we raised hell one time because there was a roustabout down at the soup kitchen that Preble Street and in those days Wayside ran. They went down, and anybody that happened to be a little dark in complexion ended up in the county jail on the claim that they were cleaning up immigration issues. And of course, half the people were citizens, but their papers were in their apartment, and they were now in the jail with no recourse. And so, frankly, Olympia Snow, of all people, rearranged a few people's body parts, so to speak, and those people were released very quickly. And Michael Chitwood, in response to the Portland City Council getting ready to ban that all activity, actually said, you don't need to. We're putting a policy in place specifically that says we do not enforce immigration law. And one of the first things we ever heard from Kevin Joyce, who was a successor to Mark Dion. I was on this board when Dion was the sheriff. He said the same thing. That's it. No, we do not do it. And if the Department of Corrections is now saying that there's a 48-hour situation, then we need to file a lawsuit, because that is ridiculous. And I think if we do nothing else as a result of this, that would be a good idea. I guess I'm always looking for something that is going to be useful and effective. And I have to be, I have to say, I don't think that I'm feeling that right now, in terms of, oh, we're just gonna tear up the contract or uncheck the box or instruct the sheriff not to admit anybody related to ICE, because frankly, he can't. And if he even did it for 20 minutes, there's a whole battalion of judges that are gonna tell him he's wrong and he can't do that. So I'm very glad that Jackie Sartoris is here. You know, she's got an insight on this that marches with, I think, the dissatisfaction that a lot of us have, and her insight relates really to people who are dealing with challenges already. What's the impact of living in fear? What's the impact of believing that you're going to randomly or unexpectedly simply have your life completely disarranged? So that's my question. Anyone who wants to answer it can. But I got one other thing. It would be great if we could get, and I'm really disappointed the law school did not do better with this proceeding. You know, they have a course and a clinic that is devoted to this issue. And that's one of the reasons why it's really a good idea for these people to be here. And one of the things that we have from the sheriff concerning ICE detainees is, have you been to see a lawyer? Has a lawyer met with you? Has a lawyer interviewed you? Blah, blah, blah. And it's almost universal that they have. There's a handful of people that, for one reason or another, whatever they might be, have not seen a lawyer. But unlike the alligator, what's it called?
Alcatraz.
Yeah, unlike alligator Alcatraz, there's lawyers available. There's a federal court right here. There are good judges in that federal court for sure. And so we have some infrastructure that can at least make sure that whatever the law is, it's going to be applied only after there's been some legal assistance to the people against whom it's being applied. There is it's 8 CFR section 236.6 is a special, I think it's a regulation.
It is.
What it looks like. That's not the same thing as a statute, that's not same thing as a law, but it has legal dignity, no question. And that has, usual garbage syntax, so it could be interpreted about 5 different ways. But certainly, one of the ways it could be interpreted is that it is not legal for us to disclose information about detainees. Certainly, we can't disclose their name, and of course, there's a catch-all phrase on top of that says, or any other information. We, based on our request, we're getting a weekly breakdown of who's in the jail because of ICE. Frankly, my belief is that it would be very much in the public interest if that was on the front page of the Portland paper every week. But, because I think people would be horrified by a couple of things. One is the fact that 2/3 of the people in the jail are not from Maine and were not arrested in Maine. They've been shunted here from some other part of this country, and not just from New England. I mean, there's a lot of places that they were arrested, and they've been sent to Portland, Maine. Why? And are we required to accept those people? That's the next question. So there's a lot of things to think about here that could be effective, but I think what we have on the table, uncheck the box, cancel the contract, that's just, giving somebody the finger and they're gonna break it off as soon as they get the chance, because frankly, it is true what Kevin has said. We don't write these laws. And there are talented people who spend their day making sure that everything is covered in ways that we wouldn't approve of. That's the situation we have at the moment. And I think I said it the first night we were here, I'll say it again. It's always a good idea to vote. And it's an additional good idea, I think, for everybody here that has this point of view. Be in touch with people who volunteer to be your fearless leader in the future. And say, look, I'm keeping an eye on what you do and what you intend to do, related not just to ICE, not just to the secret army that's been created, but when are you gonna fix the immigration laws? When are they not going to be racist? When is the admissions process not gonna take 20 years? That's my question. Sorry.
Would you like to make a comment now?
Well, I have no comments to make. And I do appreciate the presentations, they were good.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank all of the people who presented. It was very helpful for me to hear you and your stories. And thank you for the packets with the info too, for me to look at. I think you covered all my questions, Jim. No, not all of them. I would ask, and it's my understanding, and I'm looking at Mr. Gailey and our chair, that we are gonna do an executive session, I hope. Because I've got a lot of questions about the law in the legal, because I'm not a lawyer. And how this works, because I could drive a truck through some of this stuff that's written, and I'm not even a lawyer. So, that I'm hoping we can get to before we take up an official
Regular
position
meeting,
on that, okay? And other than that, for tonight, again, it was very helpful. I got some great information from you folks, so thank you. Just wanted to let people know there will be an ICE protest at the ICE facility. The Scarborough Democrats are doing it on October 8th at 4 p.m. It's gonna be on Route 1 in Scarborough. You know where the Holy Donut is? I think that's Lincoln Street there. It's gonna start there, and they're gonna do a big thing, during
4
rush
o'clock.
hour traffic. Did I say what time?
I think it's 4 o'clock.
Oh, 4, you're right, 4 o'clock. And then they're gonna march down to the ICE facility that's on Manson Libby Road, so just so you know. Because I know I mentioned it the last time, you know, that there may be protests and whatever. But again, thank you, and this gives me a lot of food for thought.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Tyler.
Thank you. Thank you for all the reading for the presenters. Give me something to do the next few days, next couple of weeks. I guess my real question is, I look at the sheet of number of detainees, and I can see the vast majority of them have had legal representation, or at least met with somebody in the legal status. My concern is, and I guess it's a question for the sheriff, if we said no, and we're not gonna do this anymore, and ICE decided for one reason or another that they're not gonna work with us, I assume most of these people you have in the facility would disappear out of Maine pretty quickly.
Yeah, or maybe some other jail, but you know, what usually happens in Cumberland transfers through the rest of the state, but, I mean, they'll find a place for them.
Yeah,
I'm guessing.
My concern is, are they going to get the legal representation that they're getting here?
So we, every Thursday, sometimes Fridays, ILAP, the USM Law School, and ACLU come in and meet with folks that want to be met with. You know, so they have a lot of access, and we try, if we get staffing, to accommodate other days, especially if something needs to be done under extraordinary circumstances. So we're pretty open to allowing them to come in, and not heard any comments whatsoever, or complaints whatsoever. So they are getting legal access. I don't know if others have their own attorney. Again, immigration law is a specialty for attorneys as well. There's only certain attorneys that will take these cases on.
Can I answer that question from the perspective of an attorney who practices nationally?
Second question, what's the average time they're here? You know, so
Seems to me, I asked that a couple months ago, it was about 19 days on average.
and they're either processed through the court system or released? Or taken
Released,
somewhere else?
I believe I've heard that some take a self-deportation where they agree to leave so they can come back legally. And that's what I've heard, is a majority of the people moving around is that, you know, they're given, do you want to fight this, or do you want to just go back and try to come back the correct way? So, but that's a question for probably ICE,
Yeah.
if you can pin them down.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you. Lots of comments. I'm not sure where to start, but I guess I'll start with questions and I'll finish with a summary comment, or a few comments for summary. First, thanks everyone for being here who spoke and gave us this perspective that we may have not heard from before. I thank Jackie for that. That's something I haven't heard from in terms of your perspective. Thank you for that. So I'll start with some questions. I guess questions for folks on the board there in terms of community health, infrastructure, support, advocacy. Thank you for the work you do. Obviously, it's critically important, particularly in these days. The argument has been, you know, if we shut down the contract with ICE, you know, then people are shipped to other places. They won't be able to receive your good services or your infrastructure. You know, is that a negative? Is that workable? And I don't expect everyone to answer on this, but I think that's an important question for me to understand. I don't want to do a harm because of something I may decide to do. I don't want to harm more than harm is already harmed. Do you folks understand my question? So is it, and you're nodding your head if you don't mind answering the question in terms of if we were to cancel the ICE contract, and these folks then were shipped to Berlin, New Hampshire, or Rhode Island, or Two Bridges here in Maine, would they be at more harm? Would they not get services that they need?
In your opinion.
In my experience and my opinion with the students and families that I know have been detained and deported, they're not getting the services either way because ICE is moving and this administration is moving so fast, like you said, 19 days. It's so hard for us to even get a hold of where they are, then get somebody to them, then get them what they need, then get them the funding to get support. So it's a systemic problem everywhere that I think what we're asking is that you stop so that we can inspire other towns and cities and countries to do this same thing and stop altogether because these families, they're not seeing their loved ones and they're not getting, you know, what they deserve either way because ICE is just moving so fast.
So that's it's a kind of a moot point in terms,
It's a
argument in
yeah.
terms of like, keep them here because they have resources and.
They're not getting those resources because they're getting deported so fast. And for people that have not broken the law, like I've had kids.
Okay, great, thank you for answering that question for me and getting a little more clarity, that's super helpful. The questions I have now, I think, are primarily for the sheriff and some of the information we've had. So, just to kind of remind myself, so most people who are picked up by ICE agents, are those civil crimes or crimes?
Civil.
Most of them are civil.
And so civil, is that a sense of protecting society because a civil crime was broken, so we're at risk for crime?
I'm not sure I can answer that.
Okay, anyone here who's,
No.
Today.
the answer's no?
The answer is no.
Thank you.
Immigrants actually commit crimes at lower rates than American citizens.
Okay, thank you for answering the question. Thanks for chiming in, whoever can answer the question with their expertise. So it's mostly civil crimes that are coming in through ICE agents, that's what it looks like to be. I think getting the data weekly, daily is important because although we had, I think, a spreadsheet, it had no date on when it was issued, which was kind of weird. Like most data has a source, where it came from and what date it was there. Was that
So it's Friday.
September 9th?
The last one was Friday,
Friday, September the,
26th,
okay.
and then the one before was Friday,
The
September the
17th.
19th.
Oh, 19th, okay. My bad there. So I think part of Commissioner Cloutier's point of having data to understand really what's happening is really important for me in terms of understanding all of the issues that are happening in the jail, what's happening in our community. So based on that information from the 19th, I did some.
One correction, the
Seven-
12th. It was 2 weeks prior to the 26th, so it'll be the 12th.
Okay. The first thing I got was dated 9/17, but I'll put the 12th on.
That's when you got it.
Okay, that's when I got it, okay, but it was from the 12th, okay. So, in terms of just getting data, it's great to get a snapshot in time, but what that is a snapshot in past time. There's not much I can infer from it except knowing it's a snapshot versus consistent data that shows a pattern or a trend that helps us understand what all the issues might be. So I'm going to advocate and ask my fellow commissioners that we receive more frequent information that has useful information that is consistent from week to week to week so we can look at the data as it develops because it's, as we know, all changing. So when I looked at the data from the 12th, I did some math also, and it looked like we had 54 records that were sent to us. 60 were from out of state. And then there was another percentage, 20%, that said unknown. So this person maybe either was living on the street or maybe in a farm field, I'm not sure, but it was listed as unknown. So, on the sheet that we received. And so if I take my 60% and my 20% of unknowns, that's 80%. So 80% of the files I saw were from, I guess not Cumberland County. There were some that were listed from Portland or Lewiston and other places, but the majority of what I saw was just people coming from different places, and not all just New England, as Commissioner Cloutier already mentioned. That's a concern for me. It's not that I don't think that, we all were in this together, but it really, to me, creates questions in my mind about what are we doing here? What are we doing shuffling folks around? And in some cases, the intake has unknown location. Like, what do you mean, unknown? That's a red flag for me that we don't require certain data at the jail. So Sheriff, to that point, when someone comes in through an ICE agent, they bring a person in, can you step me through what happens, you say they're treated like every other person who comes into the jail. Do they take their name and number? Tell me what happens.
Major? I call my subject matter expert.
Okay, great. I'd like to know step by step what is happening.
So Commissioner, when they come in, they have a pre-medical assessment.
No, when the ICE agent comes in, do they have a piece of paper that says?
They do.
Do they have an administrative warrant or a judicial warrant?
They have a detainer or arrest warrant based on the situation.
A detainer
Well,
or an arrest warrant?
when they come in, they're brought in on an arrest warrant. If we have a person that's another law enforcement agency and they're transferred over to custody into ICE, it's a detainer, and then they're served in person by an ICE.
So like someone from the Boston area, they might have a detainer that comes to our jail?
No, we have a person that's arrested in Cumberland County Jail, like a local arrest.
Yeah.
ICE will put a detainer, they'll be notified, they'll come in person and serve the individual the arrest warrant.
Okay, so the arrest warrant, not an administrative warrant. You're not seeing those?
No, arrest warrant.
Okay. Because what's the difference between an arrest warrant and a judicial warrant?
I mean, it's an arrest warrant that basically ICE brings in.
And what's the difference between an administrative warrant?
That's good.
Yeah,
I couldn't get into the definition
Sure,
of it.
yeah, and I think that's, I make that point because I don't know either. Like, there's all of these terms being used to understand how people are coming in and, if people's rights are being violated or not, whether they have the right paperwork. And so that's the reason I asked you the question, not to try to stump you or anything, is I don't know either. So I'm trying to figure out what are these differences, just like a civil crime versus a criminal crime. What is that all about and what's the difference? So when someone comes in, so ICE brings a person in, is ICE wearing a mask or do you see their face?
You see the face.
Okay, and do you see a badge on them or identifying
They have
thing?
to identify themselves
Okay,
before they
great,
come in the
okay.
secure area.
Okay, super. So we see their face, we see their badge, they bring in a person, and then what happens?
There's a documentation that they submit to the intake officer.
Yeah.
I know that you had a question about unknown locations.
Yeah.
Sometimes that documentation doesn't have a location.
Okay.
And again, cooperation on the intake person, when they do have a conversation with the arrestee, sometimes they don't provide it. It's not a mandatory thing.
Okay.
So we get a packet from the federal, from like the marshals or ICE that has the best information that they have.
Okay.
So again, you'll see on some of the documentation, it says Portland, Westbrook, but then there's times that we have
Unknown.
unknown.
Okay, and we let that happen because that's just what happens. Yeah, I get it. I'm just asking. I'm just trying to get information.
It happens in state and local crimes as well. PD, if they don't know where the person has come from, and they refuse to give it up, we may put unknown or maybe transient.
Okay, so some of the unknowns that I counted as potentially not from here could have been unknown Cumberland County.
Could have been, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this,
All right, I just want to make sure.
I'm not gonna make a
Yeah,
determination
and I don't
that,
want to, yeah, so the only ones I could
assumption.
definitively say was 80% were from a place that wasn't in Maine, in Cumberland County, so. Okay, well, thank you for running me through the steps when they come in and kind of what,
and again.
did I miss anything?
No, again, they're treated like everybody else. We're an accredited facility. We hold more accreditations for the welfare of the offenders in custody than any facility in the state. The only people they have close to us is the State Department of Corrections. So I can assure you that they get the proper access, get the proper medical care, the proper recreation, and the proper access to attorneys, et cetera.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, speaking of the proper care and our facility, I know that when there was questions around the ICE contract, I know we've been working for ICE for a very long time. I think you said 34 years, maybe?
32.
Yeah, and at one point, we stopped working with ICE, and I think I wasn't a commissioner then, but when was that?
That was 22 to July of 24, maybe.
And so,
And
yeah.
something I found out recently is we stopped working for the US Marshals.
Yeah.
but ICE kept bringing some of their people in, so
Yeah.
periodically,
Yeah.
even though I thought we weren't doing any feds, some were coming in, but there were smaller numbers than now.
Okay. And that 22 through the 24th, when we weren't working with the feds or accepting ICE, was that because of COVID, or was that something
No,
else?
well, it was the Great Resignation. We had some issues with staffing.
Okay.
So there were probably 2 times where I only accepted certain arrests, which I had no authority to do, and I was called on the carpet by some judges.
Sure.
And in this particular case too, we were only taking certain arrests that were violent in nature. We weren't taking like traffic crimes and stuff.
Right.
And at the time, to give our staff a breather, we got rid of the federal inmates. It was kind of a mutual thing, actually. They were gonna pull out anyway because of the fact that I was only accepting certain arrests, and they felt like they were putting pressure on us. So they left.
And did they send a written warning that they were ending the contract, or they just said, we're not sending people anymore?
No, they called me and said, hey, based on you telling the police departments only bring in certain arrests,
Yeah.
they said, we're gonna move our people out. And I said, well, I mean, you don't have to. I just think that if a police officer who has the discretion and the authority to arrest a soccer mom for going 31 miles an hour over a speed limit could arrest somebody, you can do the same thing with a ticket. And so some of those arrests are what I was trying to drill down on. The reality was, in May of 2024, I was called to Augusta by 3 judges, the Chief Justice, one of them, and asked where I had the authority, and I said, to be honest with you, Your Honor, I don't have the authority, based on what I told you today. But I have the obligation to run a safe jail. And at that time, I had some staffing issues, and I had some tired staff, and they kind of gave me a wink and a nod, politely, and just suggested that, I might want to try to open up as soon as possible.
Thank you for the history lesson on that, I appreciate it. And so during that time where we had staffing issues, so we weren't taking as many ICE, I know that our Department of HR has worked hard with your department as well to try to recruit CO, correctional officers, to help bolster our staff. And can you tell me now how many positions we're still missing in the jail, in terms of we're trying to fill?
I believe we have 10 unfilled budgeted positions.
10 unfilled, okay.
Budgeted.
And what's our target? Like, how many do we have and what's our target?
I would say to fill those 10 and have a conversation about the unbudgeted positions.
How many unbudgeted positions do we
I believe
have?
it's over 40.
Over 40. So in theory, it could be, we're short 50 people. Is that, am I doing the math right there?
Well, right.
Okay, so we're short about 50.
And again, we've made alterations to our operations. We don't have our pre-release open for reentry. So again, that's a significant amount of bodies over there.
Yeah,
And there's certain things that we've condensed down
gotcha.
to maximize our staffing.
Okay.
I think it's important to mention too, part of that staffing is about 30 new Americans is part of the new corrections staff we have.
Yeah.
So you heard people saying, I don't dare walk in front of the jail. We have people that are coming in each and every day that are new Americans that are working for us.
So we've done some good job hiring. We're still short 50, in theory, of unfilled and unbudgeted. And so that, what would, if we filled those 50, what would our target staff be? Would it be, how many people would we employ?
I believe it's 140, isn't it?
140, okay.
128 correction officers.
28, but
128?
other positions that we've,
There's 16 sergeants and 7 lieutenants.
So the full number is 128?
I think it's 126.
126 would be what we're looking for. Okay. I know it seems like I'm going down a rabbit hole, but I'm really not. So 126. How many inmates do we have right now?
425.
425 inmates. And is there a ratio for us to have so many correction officers to inmates? Is like, since we're an accredited facility, do we have a target there?
we have a staffing analysis, and
Yep.
our posts are are staffed appropriately based on what we have right now for
Yeah.
population.
So we're in good shape, is what you're saying?
We are. If in a perfect world, we'd have more sentenced inmates, it would justify opening up the pre-release, but we don't. The majority of our population are pre-detained, pre-arrest. I mean, pre-sentence. Pre-sentence.
Oh, okay, pre-sentence, got it, okay. Okay, so I guess I just wanted to understand the staffing, because that affects safety, and we're all talking about safety in terms of, do we have the proper correctional officers with the amount of inmates, and what if we keep getting more inmates? What if we have, less of a ratio between correction officers and more inmates? I'm a little concerned that there could be a safety issue, again, potentially, just I'm almost there. And I guess I just want to understand what we're striving to do in general around our ultimate jail experience.
So first of all, there's a finite number of ICE/federal inmates that we will take. We opened the pod, and the feds, all of them, ICE and US Marshals share that pod. When that's full, we're done. We have the capacity to open up, but we don't have the staffing to do that, so we're not gonna open that up. About 2 months ago, our regular beds for local law enforcement were getting crowded because some of the ICE were individuals that were low risk, so we were taking those folks in, but I had to tell the staff, yeah, ICE has got to back off on that, because we need to keep the beds for.
So it's a little bit of a
state.
we need to take care of our own folks, and then we've got the ICE folks, and then, how does that work with
We
pod?
have to take care of our own.
Yeah, right.
And so the pod is 84 males, and our current female pod is around 40-ish with
That's-
state and local.
When you say pod, that's federal pod?
No, it's just a pod.
Okay,
We don't have a separate pod for ICE females and US Marshal females. They're
what do you
integrated
do for
with-
males? Is that what you do?
Yes,
Okay,
Yep.
so we have a federal pod of males,
yes,
that is a maximum of how many?
84.
84, okay. So it seems like we're getting kind of close.
Well, we hover, but
Yeah.
they bring in and they take out. They bring in, take out.
So, since we're getting close, and obviously, there's a lot of money out there for the work to be done, I'm concerned about, one, the safety of our correctional officers. They're doing a lot of forced overtimes, is that right?
It's reduced.
What's the percentage of forced overtimes right now?
I would say they're doing about 16 hours.
60?
16,
16.
above the 40.
So everybody who's on the
For the
staff
most
does
part.
16 hours forced overtime?
They volunteer too also.
Well, volunteer, but, they're doing the overtime. And so, that's the other question in terms of when people are forced overtime, it could potentially lead to burnout. It's a tough job to do, I can only imagine. I've been in the jail a couple of times, touring the jail. It's gotta be a burnout situation if you're there, then you're doing overtime, mistakes can happen, injuries can happen. It's a concern. And I just wanna say.
We're watching it.
That's good.
I assure you.
I'm glad you're watching it, because I think, if we're talking about safety, we want to make sure everybody is taken care of. So that helps me understand kind of what's happening at the jail, and I appreciate answering to some of the questions. I only have maybe a few more questions around, so the jail's open 24/7, and that's like 168 hours a week. And how many, I think you said in a previous meeting, ICE is there for like 20 hours a week, is that what they've committed to?
Yeah, they have a representative that comes in 20 hours a week.
Okay, so ICE is doing 20 hours out of the 106, so they're almost 12% of the time.
Business hours, they come in the meet with
Business
us.
hours,
Yep.
yeah, right.
Monday through Friday.
Right, Monday through Friday, right. So again, it puts a lot of stress on our staff if they're just doing 12% of the time helping administer, and our staff is doing 80% of the time administering, particularly on the weekends, particularly with the forced overtime. I think we're going down an unsustainable path, and that's why I asked those questions, because I just want to make sure we understand what we're doing in terms of treatment and safety for everyone involved. And those stats are pretty impressive. So we'll just keep an eye on that, and I think I think that's all the questions I have for all the presenters at this time. I think, oh, one last one. When the contract was negotiated or most recently adopted, did ICE have some particular special requests of us that they wanted us to do? Or is it the same old, same old? Did it have any special requests? I don't know, like special requests, the things that we had to do that we weren't doing, but they were coming in and they wanted it done a certain way.
They come in, no,
Okay.
they come in and audit us quite frequently.
Yeah.
You
Are
know,
we
they
audited
would-
on like a checklist or something?
They have detention standards
Okay, detention standards, okay.
that far exceed.
Okay. So for us to do the contract, they had no questions about
We just had an audit done, we had no discrepancies.
September 11th, they were in, 2 people were in scouring
Yeah.
our facility to make sure that we're doing what we say we do.
Okay, but nothing special?
No?
Okay. Okay. And then, I'll finish with my comments. So thank you for answering all the questions. I know they're probably a lot, and I got into the weeds a bit, but, you know, I'd like to understand a issue before we potentially vote on something. So I think there's a lot of legal issues still outstanding that we don't completely understand. That withstanding, I think we're moving in the wrong direction. I really think we need to look at the contract, we need to make some amendments, we need to potentially not work with ICE anymore. I think it's creating so much untrust, it's fear, it's security, it's safety. It's not meant to be doing what it's meant to do. I mean, I don't need to listen to, as much as I appreciate the stories, I've heard them a lot. I've talked to people a lot. I understand and I feel your pain, I hear you, I know what you're saying. I agree, it's unacceptable. I don't know why we are gonna sit here and think it is acceptable. It's not acceptable. And we do have the ability, there was a contract, there once wasn't a contract, we once weren't working with ICE, and now we're working with ICE. We can do something about this. And yeah, maybe ICE will still come, and maybe the sheriff will still let ICE people come in, but we can say no. We can look at the contract, we can open it up, we can make amendments, potentially, around transparency, about requirements. We can do some things, I believe, as elected officials. And you know what? Maybe it will be for naught, and maybe ICE will keep coming, but you know what? We did something. You know, that's where I'm at. Let's do an actionable item that, even if it doesn't make sense, maybe we need to take the stand. Maybe we have to stand up and say, no, this is not right. It's unacceptable that the Constitution is being trampled. People are losing their rights, and it's not in every instance. But the fact that it's not all violent criminals that are coming to the jail, or we have people from Rhode Island and Texas and all over the place using our jail. And that's a great jail, but do we really need to? So that's where I stand right now. Clearly, I would love to have a little bit more legal help on some of the issues around opening up the contract. I know that we have questions about Maine law, but I'd like to see what the contract, where we're going, and if we can make any amendments that would allow us to show faith and trust in what we hope to do to serve our community, to keep our community safe and not live in fear. I think it's just unacceptable where we are right now. So I'm just saying it out loud, and I guess giving everybody a warning of how I feel if we do come to a vote. Thank you.
All right, I've got a couple of questions that kind of border on what Commissioner Smith has indicated. Given the existing laws and mandates, without a contract, would you still accept and hold ICE prisoners?
Absolutely. I would follow the law. That's
So,
what to do.
what you're saying is that if we went at the contract and indicated that it was no longer in effect, given the law, you would still have to accept?
Yes.
And house, okay. Let's see. Have you ever refused an ICE arrestee? And what are the conditions if you
I
have?
personally?
No.
No, actually, we've had a couple of cases. So we use detainer. Detainer is kind of like overused. I think Commissioner Cloutier is the only one that's been here since 2017, where I was almost thrown out of office because I refused to acknowledge a detainer, whereby a member of ICE called my staff and said, hey, so-and-so is getting released, and we want you to hold them for the 48 hours. What we could have finished the sentence, in my opinion, was so that we can find evidence to hold him. And I had done some research and found out that, you know, we're not obligated to acknowledge that detainer in that method. So I worked with the county attorney to come up with a process, because I wasn't gonna take the written note on a napkin to hold the person, or the phone call, hold the person. So that's why today, when we talk about detainer, they come in and actually serve the person. Our staff, I don't want them being any connection with ICE. We house ICE inmates, that's all we do. I know the commissioner mentioned about the ICE person being in the jail. That's the greatest thing ever, because he can talk to them about their upcoming court appearances, what they have to do for paperwork, etc. I don't want my staff, my corrections officers, giving out information, because much like the police officers, they have A, no authority, B, they don't know immigration law. So it's huge that they were there for 20 hours. Probably it'd be good for 40, but it seems to be working for the 63 we have, in addition to all those folks that are allowed to come in and work with them. So we recently, there were 2 police departments that brought somebody in, had called ICE to say, hey, I don't know if you're interested in this person. When they made bail, ICE wasn't there, they got released, because ICE wasn't there to take them into custody with their detainer, with their probable cause to hold them. So yes, we've refused a lot of people, but there have been also, last Friday, we had an individual that was on state charges. 48 hours before, my policy is, okay, we know, and we typically know ahead of time, that somebody that is serving a sentence on state charges, we know when they're gonna get released. We call ICE about 48 hours before, and we say, hey, so-and-so, you have an interest in this person. If you want them, on their release date, when we release them, if you're not here, the person's being released. So they sent somebody in on a Saturday, because that's when he was gonna get released, and rearrested them under their charges and put them in the ICE unit. So occasionally, if they're not that interested to come in and take them into custody, then we release them.
So you're calling them? Yeah. That's cooperation.
I guess that's the question. Now, you had a question you kept wanting to ask, or a comment you wanted to make.
Well, just the question I wanted to ask is that I've been told repeatedly over the last few days that you did not have the data from the sheriff, and so when that was first brought up, I was confused why we were lied to about that.
I can answer that. The data from the sheriff came in around 2:30 this afternoon.
Okay, I thought Commissioner Cloutier had mentioned getting the data over the last few weeks, but maybe I misunderstood that.
There was a previous set of data we got, and then we did get more this afternoon, I would say. You know, we got some stuff 2 weeks ago. And I don't think that's a secret. Then we did get some today. So.
Is it possible for us to be provided with that data, or for that data to be made public?
Well, that brings up a fine point, which is we have this federal secrecy provision, which I was going to ask Mr. Gailey to figure out where he could find a clever lawyer who could actually look into that and tell us whether it's a violation of federal law for us to give it to anybody. And it seems to be directed at the person's name, but then, like I said, there's a catch-all additional phrase that may affect us. So I assume that somewhere, somehow, that has been litigated, and there's a decision out there somewhere that says what that all means, but I don't have enough access to federal information to know. And then, so I think probably we're gonna need to look into that before we go too much further. But
Is that, are you talking about the 8 CFR 236.6?
I guess
Is that what
that's
you're
it.
talking about?
I think so.
It's being litigated in Michigan.
Yeah.
So
How they
it's
doing
called-
so far?
It was
I don't
called to our
know.
attention by somebody because we were putting
Yeah,
photos.
who came up with that? That's pretty obscure, by the way.
What's that?
That
Regulation,
provision.
Yeah,
CFR?
well, my staff was called by somebody from the feds that basically says you're putting these folks' pictures on with all our other inmate photos and called our attention to, we can't do that based on this regulation. So it's photo and name. The way I read it, I think we're all set with giving all the other information out as long as I don't identify them.
I'll
I
just,
think, and that's what that's what the syntax of our current information is. But like I say, I think we need to have an expert who's telling us we're okay, because there is a catch-all of additional information in that so-called regulation. I mean, I don't know who wrote that, I don't know who's approved it, and I've got, I mean, I really kind of wonder whether it would pass First Amendment muster, but.
I mean, we do have our website that says inmate locator, which I want to say kudos to the website. If you go onto our county jail website and you try to find an inmate who isn't an ICE person, you can find your person, which is great. Some county jails that I researched don't have anything like that. And I think, wow, look at this. We have this little link. That sounds like a best practice. Why wouldn't we do that? Best practice for other people.
So it came up, the DA got a complaint out of somebody that lives in the town that she was at. And our system was down completely, so it was asking about it.
Yeah.
And then I said, yeah, no problem, it's gonna be going up, and then we got the call. It's hard to be transparent in the world we live in, but then I had to go back and say, you're not gonna believe this, but now we can't even share the picture or the name,
So should we not be doing that for the other people on our website?
No, there's no federal law that
Yeah.
is on point, and I'm sorry to talk law and act like I'm an expert here, but this much I know. There's no federal law on point when it comes to state inmates who are here with state charges. So the interesting situation you may have is that you may have, in the situation you described a minute ago, someone who is in jail on state charges, who then is the subject of a detainer request or a detainer which is brought to the jail, and then they become a federal inmate, and at that point they disappear. And I, you know, so there's a lot of litigation going on around all of this area of law, because I think all the bounds are being, you know, I think stretched. I think we're all aware of that. You know, I would have a lot of questions myself for the county attorney about, you know, what standards you can apply, for example. If you decide that you're going to have federal inmates there, my interest is to make sure that people who are violent are going, you know, to be held. That's always my interest, is public safety. So, you know, can the federal inmates be people who have a history of violent charges, for example? Can there, you know, can the actual detainer that they're being held be something which is signed? There are some that are signed by judges because they have greater accusations than simply that they've, say, overstayed a visa or are awaiting, many times, people are actually awaiting a hearing. And so their status is not illegal. So I think there's a lot of questions to ask of a competent immigration attorney, and I am not one, to be super clear.
I really wonder what the release requirements or opportunities are with a federal judge sitting 2 doors down. You know, especially as you say, for an asylum seeker, they've asked for asylum. Frankly, the hearing is 5 years out at least for most of them.
That's right.
And they're basically released on their own recognizance ahead of that time, or they used to be. And I think you're right that by rumor and reputation, ICE is picking up people who are legally in the country, but who are not permanently legally in the country necessarily.
But then they're moving them very rapidly to, I think, avoid the possibility that some of the typical legal rights that are afforded to these folks are just not available to them.
And
So
that apparently is a policy that comes from the top.
So
Okay.
Chair, sorry, you got waylaid there by all that. If that's not right, you're the last guy to speak, so.
I would like to ask if Mr. Gailey, would consult with him about, we need more horses to pull the wagon, it seems like, especially when it comes to immigration law here.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want to ask?
Who's your favorite immigration lawyer? Who can tell me?
Exactly.
Well, I guess.
And we have a county attorney, and I'm sure she would be able to figure out what to do next.
And if I might, I had sent a communication to the commissioner saying that I had asked the Attorney General a question about this evening, that he had not yet responded. I drafted that email one evening, and then I sent it the next morning, and late that evening, he did in fact respond to me, and I apologize, because I said, he hasn't responded to me. Well, he did. And what he said was exactly what I said at the start of my brief communication, which is just with respect to the attorney, which is, the Attorney General's office is not an expert in immigration law any more than I am, and that he recommended reaching out to your corporation counsel, and then through them for someone who can talk to you both about contract law, that would be your corporation counsel, I would assume, and immigration law, because really, I can only speak to our direct experience working with victims and defendants, and that's not really relevant, frankly, to what your consideration is today.
Something at the workshop.
Maybe executive session.
Okay, I guess now we'll go into closing remarks.
I just have one question, if that's okay. It's okay if it's not. I just feel like it was glanced over when, my question is, the sheriff said that they do call ICE to let them know, so I think I just wanted that it's clarified to the public that it's not just housing, that he's saying they call to give them the heads up to ask if they want to take somebody. So I just want to clarify that that is cooperation.
Well, I want to clarify that ICE gets our list once a week, as does DHHS for deadbeat dads and other federal and state agencies get it. They express an interest and give us paperwork that when this guy or gal is released, they want to take him into custody. So they do the probe, and yes, we call and confirm, hey, gonna be released, so if you're interested, come get him, because they're gonna be released.
That is cooperating with them. I just want to clarify.
By holding ICE inmates, I'm cooperating with them.
Call
But I'm not doing ICE enforcement, that type of cooperation that has been thrown out there today.
Enough.
So, I guess, just in terms of action items or next steps, I don't know if we've got a lot of information tonight. I want, again, thank everyone for what they offered and answered questions. But I think as a group of commissioners, we need to understand what potentially might be our next steps or things that we need, like if we need an immigration attorney, or can we round out to say what our needs might be even? So that we know.
I would like, personally, I would like to have an executive session with the county attorney, at least to start. If we could get an immigration attorney in at the same time, it'd be great, but I'm not sure how that works when you guys work with the county attorney. But I agree, I have a sister-in-law who's an immigration attorney, so I know that it's very different, and you gotta be very specialized in what you do there. So, yeah, I would like to see an immigration attorney involved. That's just because I know what happens and doesn't happen, so.
Okay, look, I think we can design that offline here.
Yeah, no, and I'll second the motion of it's very complex.
Yeah.
It's bad idea piled on bad idea for the last 125 years.
Okay. All right, let me get into my closing remarks here. First, I wish to thank all of you for participating. There's great differences of opinion, and that's a good thing. But that's what's going to make this democracy work, as has been pointed out. For those making a presentation, you've assisted us in giving a broader understanding to your positions and beliefs of the law and the rules by which county government may operate and why they exist. Thank you. To those that gave greater exposure to the issues of immigration and the way the First Amendment rights may be distorted, I applaud you. To all of us, I hope we better understand that the options by which counties operate are limited when addressing such an issue, but that we now have a better grasp of which level and/or branch of our federal or state governments that may better affect change and those which may address your expressed concerns. Lastly, our plan is to have an action motion on the agenda at the next regular meeting of the commission, as was expressed at the beginning. With that, I wish you good evening, and may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. I do have, there's been a request for a special executive session at some point. I assume
We're going to have, that's really, Jim, it was on the calendar.
we're doing that next, is that what you're saying?
No, not this calendar, but this is on, it's on the.
All right, sorry to ask. Second the motion.
Those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. And thank you.
When is the executive session, next week?
Patty?
Right?
I worked in HR for a while.
It's not a
We're
fun
having an
job.
October 6th executive session.
Get right down to it.
A week from today.
I know. It's a curse.
Oh, I don't know, yeah, I gotta look at my schedule.
It's a curse and a blessing.
I know. Yep.
You will remember.
Have you ever
Today's the 29th.
I have friends who were so angry about how that went, that they moved to Brunswick. And then they became activists in Brunswick.
I'm open next Monday.
No.
Manager Gailey.
14th.